All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Colored Conversations.
Yeah.
We have a special guest in the house. Well, I guess not in the house, but we have a special guest today, none other than Pastor Patrick Graham. He is the Allegheny East Youth Director.
Yeah.
He's a man of God, a man of one wife,
One
man
more.
of three kids, and just all around, just great guy. Just talking to him some more, or talking to him right before we started, and so I'm excited for this conversation. I know a lot of you have been waiting for this. A lot of you have been asking me about this conversation. So first off, Patrick, can you just introduce yourself to all our people? Say a little word, or something.
Well, you put it out there already. You know who I am. I'm Patrick Graham. I been working for Allegheny East for about 19 years.
Mhm.
Um, Going on 20. It's I'm also in school, following your footsteps. I'm doing mental health counseling. A lot of people say it's late, but the way I look at it is never too late to add something,
Mhm.
to your learning structure. But I do think it works in ministries, especially in youth ministries. I got three kids. I call them kids, but my oldest one is 25. My other one is 23. My next one is 21. So um, I like to dibble dabble in finance stuff and uh, um, do a lot of what do you call it? I'm thinking about right now even opening a restaurant.
Okay.
A restaurant here in Maryland. Just got my hands at a lot of stuff. And right now COVID got me inside, so I'm doing renovations. I'm redoing my kitchen. Matter of
Okay.
fact, that goes into our conversation today when we be teasing about Jamaicans having like 10 jobs.
Right. And that's a good segue.
Yeah.
So I know some of you wonder why do I have this color conversations? Why do I have Pastor Patrick Graham on here? And so the reason why I have him on here is because he is Caribbean, of Caribbean descent. He is from Jamaica,
Mhm.
second generation or third generation.
I'm second generation.
Second generation. And
Mhm.
so we want to talk because some people say that is there some rift between Black Americans and Caribbeans, and so we want to discuss that today. I'm from Brooklyn, New York,
Yeah.
born and raised in Brooklyn. Patrick, you born and raised in Brooklyn as well, right?
Right. That's right.
That's
That's
right.
right.
That's right.
Canarsie, Brooklyn. I grew up in Crown Heights. No, not grew up. I was born in Crown Heights. By the time I reached 7, 8 years old, my parents took us out to Canarsie. And you know what Canarsie is.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was born like in the Fort Greene, Farragut section, and then we moved out to Coney Island.
Gotcha.
So so two Brooklynites.
Yep.
But again, you are of Caribbean descent.
Yep.
So I was trying to think, how do we launch into this question? And so I guess, well, first of all, what are your thoughts with the whole George Floyd thing? What are your thoughts there?
I mean, outside of the whole Caribbean thing, that's it's hurtful. We've been seeing this thing happen for years. This is nothing that's brand new to us. Um, there are a whole lot more that we have not seen. Cameras made this thing real for us. Phone cameras made this thing real for us. So, how I feel about it, deeply hurt and worried. Um, that's how I feel about it. I feel even now my connection to it is that my sons drive, my sons out there, even as they do their own thing. My sons are doing their own thing out there. They don't necessarily follow all the rules, Pastor. They don't do, they don't follow all the rules. Neither of them, right? So I'm worried about whether or not, they may say the wrong thing to a police officer or say the wrong thing out in the street. So it bothers me what happened with George Floyd, because if we had not seen it on video, it would have gone by and we would never have known what happened. It would have been a local thing, a family thing, and it would have been done from there. So I'll tell you right now, I don't care that he was a porn star. Not a porn star. I don't care that he was in porn. I don't care about his rap sheet. He's a person.
Right.
And they just took the life from him. The police officers took life from him as though he was judge and jury wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm worried about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right. So yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. So now my question is, let's dive into this conversation.
Yep.
Caribbeans, we call Black Americans, I guess.
Listen, don't be afraid. Listen,
is it African Americans? What is it? I'm trying to keep up with. I don't know. Is it Black Americans? African American, whatever. Right. So now I have been told, and you correct me if I'm wrong. Just growing up in New York City, these are the things that I heard. These are from some of my Caribbean friends,
sure.
And they have told me that they said that when they have been told. In so many words that from their parents, that Black Americans are lazy, and that's probably like the main thing, and it put a rift there, which causes them, to look down upon Black Americans. So I just want can you speak to that?
That is a difficult thing for someone to hear. Now, I know you. Let me just be clear. I was born in Brooklyn. My parents are from Jamaica. They came maybe 10 years before I was, not even 10 years, 164, 162. So almost 10 years before I was born. We have an advantage that we grew up in New York City. I mean, we grew up in the city, the actual city. We didn't go upstate. We didn't grow up in Long Island. We grew up in the city. And you asked me a question, and I'm going to answer it and be outright and out front. I've never heard my parents say American people are lazy. I'm talking about my parents, my father and my mother. But I grew up with a consortium of family. I grew up in the same building where we lived in. My grandmother lived in that building, and my two uncles lived in that building. You understand what I'm saying? So I grew up in family with family for at least 7-8 years when we were coming up through Crown Heights. So let me just put out there, yes, what has been heard, what has been taught. The African American is lazy. The African American will live in an apartment for the rest of their lives, instead of buying houses or etc. They'd rather have the car than to be in the house. I've heard that amongst family. I've heard that amongst Caribbeans. But lazy is not just one of them. It's even though lazy seems like a word of like a name calling type thing, but like the level of pride, I'm going to go by that. The level of pride is not, the level of esteem is not where it should be in Black American communities. Therefore, Caribbean people then not only has been taught by white people that you're better, but because of where they came from, British people feel in Europe that they're better than everyone else. So therefore, it's a crossbreed. It crossed down to say that if British believe that they're better, and the colonized, look, I know we tease with the word the colonizers, right? But isn't that what it really is?
Yeah.
Right? The colonizers that have the Caribbean islands over the past years, they're going to think, Caribbean people are going to think that they're better. And you do hear it. Yes, you do hear it, that they feel that they are better. And let's remember this as we talk through this. It's not everyone. It's not all Caribbeans. You understand what I'm saying? It is a field, but it's not all Caribbeans. I'm speaking as a second generation, because you still have Caribbean people that marry American American couples. So I'm not uncomfortable to be able to say we need to be as one, because you would literally find that at a table. Can I just expound it? Get on it?
Yeah, go ahead. So
So,
you here?
so as a pastor, right? I have sat at two tables. I've sat at the American table and I've sat at the Caribbean table. A lot of people, unless I say it, don't know that I have a Caribbean background, right? So I have sat down at a Caribbean table and have heard Caribbeans talk about Americans. This is like an after Sabbath meal. You understand what I'm saying?
What type of things that they would say there?
For example, I'll go back to the same type of deal. They, education wise, they don't want to reach to the top. Now, I'm not going to say at that table. I'm just giving you a plethora of certain things, right? Education wise, they don't want to reach to the doctorate level. They just want to stop here. In other words, this is their glass ceiling. Most of our churches are from the urban communities. Most of them are churches. So I'm speaking even of our Adventists, our churches are. And so because they're in the urban areas, you're going to find a whole lot more African Americans going to church from the community, while you're going to find a whole lot more Caribbeans outside of the community coming into church.
Okay.
So because of that, and let me pinpoint it just a little bit. You will hear people, Caribbean people, talk about their style of dress, for example, how they come to church, what they wear, how they speak. You understand what I'm saying? So you're going to hear more of. We have to retain our culture, so that we're not like them. We don't live in rent houses. We don't live in rent out communities. We own. You'll hear those type of things. All right. Now I'm talking about from a Caribbean standpoint. I have sat down, even though we're talking about Caribbeans right now, I have sat down at a table where there's Americans that don't know that I'm from Caribbean descent.
Okay.
And it goes, listen, I've sat at the table where I've heard people say,
All right, say it, spit it out. What you got?
These coconuts come here and take our jobs. These coconuts come here and, on the banana boat and they got like 10 jobs and they huddle up in their own groups. They form their own clans, even in church, because they do. Caribbean people do. They have their own clans. They eat their own types of food. They cook different. I've heard Caribbean people say, "I'm not eating over this American's house because they don't cook like we cook." Whether the house is clean. By the way, I've been to dirty Caribbean houses. I've been to dirty American houses. So I'm just giving you the stereotypical, okay? The stereotypical. House is dirty. We hear it. We hear it. I have not. I'll give you the closest that I can get to as far as my mother is concerned. And the reason why I got to say this, because she failed this test as far as this is concerned. Like dating. Let's look at dating, for example. Mm-hmm. My parents would have a heart attack if I came home with a white woman, but they never talked about whites before. You understand what I'm saying? They never said white people are this, white people are that, but I knew that I couldn't come home with a white, Spanish, Indian. I couldn't do it. All right. So let's go to extra mile to say that let's just go to extra mile. They wanted you around Caribbean with girls, like if you want to date or etc. How do we know that? Is because they want to know the mother of the person that you're dating. They want to know the father of the person that you're dating. They're not going to come out and say, we don't want you dating an American girl. they're saying, hey, what about sister so-and-so's daughter? Or what about so-and-so's daughter? Oh, do you like so-and-so? And all of those people are of Caribbean descent. You understand what I'm saying? All right, but let me get to the next one. I've dated, and when I say dated, I mean seriously dated, not like hanging out. I've dated a girl from Indiana, uh, one from the projects up the street.
Mm-hmm.
And let me stay on those two. My mother adored them. You understand what I'm saying? So even though you knew what she wanted, I know that those two that I've dated, and when I say seriously dated, I'm not talking about going to get ice cream. I'm talking about dating, like this could be marriage material. This could be. My mother adored them. My mother adored them. Never spoke bad about them. Never spoke. And never came to me and said, "I don't want you to be there." And one of them was from the projects, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm saying is that that Caribbean people. You see, I know it's going to sound broad. Caribbean people look out for their own.
Mm-hmm.
Caribbean, and in order for them to look out for their own, they're going to shelter you from everybody else, including Black Americans,
Wow.
including Black Americans. And what I have to admit to you is that it's if the second generation don't step up and say, "Mom, Dad, really? That doesn't even make sense." They won't know. Because you're talking about, I'm going to speak for my family. My father, whose father was my grandfather was a vet in Jamaica.
Right.
That's and we might say, oh, a vet. Oh, Pat, that's a doctor. No, he knew about animals. He but he wasn't the one. When we think vet now, we're talking about your pet dog and your pet
Right.
this. No, he was delivering for cows, donkeys, you know what I'm saying, making sure that the people in the community, he wasn't $200,000-$300,000 a year taking care of animals. He was a community vet, that knew about animals. But my dad's house was a 2-story house in Jamaica with 8-9 rooms. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
My
Mm-hmm.
mother
Don't worry
on
about that phone.
my mother on the other hand came from a place where it was 14 of them. And when I look at the house that they came from, I'm like, how did you come from there? I don't understand. How did you, all of you? Well, some of us was in at this time, maybe 7 of us was there at the same time. My father walked 4 miles to go to school. You know what I'm saying? My mother talked about going to school barefoot. You see what I'm saying? So coming from that concept of that, coming to the United States meant a better life. That's what it meant. And because it meant a better life, it meant everybody get out of the way, because whoever's in the way is going to hold us back from what our dream is or what our dream was. So
yeah, the milk and honey.
And that's what the United States in the 50s and the 60s, people coming over from the Caribbean, their life wasn't about black and white. Their life wasn't about the civil rights movement. Now they were in it, the civil rights movement. Caribbeans were in the civil rights movement. Come on, we know that, especially those who have been here from the 50s and 60s. But those who have come in the 60s and felt that it was over, there was nothing to deal with, went on with life. It's about accumulation. You know what I mean? And then I'm going to stick to that. It's about accumulation. It's about keeping your money in the banks, not under your mattress. It's about having trust in political figures. Yes, I said it. Having trust in the man. Yeah, they did. They did have a naive kind of trust in the man, and while still trying to keep the second generation understanding that you still need to be proud to be Jamaican, or still proud to be Bajan, or still proud to be, and you notice I'm not even touching the African side.
Yeah.
My family, as far as we could go back, we were slaves, but we were also holding slaves for British, for the British.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah. So your family were slaves, but they were slave owners. Is that what you're saying? Or they were working for the slave
we
masters?
will call here house Negroes.
Yeah. Okay.
What we
Okay.
would call here house Negroes, you will call that plantation Negroes. So, in other words, my family held, I'm like a my last name is Graham. That is an English Irish name from the Granthams, and so we were slaves. And I'm going to tell you this: slavery in the Caribbean was more harsh. Now I'm going to put it together. Was more harsh than slavery in the United States. They were both harsh. Period. Let's just get that straight. They were both harsh, but there was a psychological harshness that came around with the Caribbeans because of the British.
Okay.
All right, the British wanted their livestock to be better. The British didn't trade their livestock. You understand what I'm saying? The British was about how much more sugar can we get on this plantation? How many more people can we get working? So they didn't physically take down those who weren't paying attention or those who weren't listening or whatever. They cared more about their agriculture or their economics more than anything else, but also allowed the hierarchy of blacks to look over each other. Because, hey, to be honest with you, there was not enough white people in Jamaica to control Jamaica. So who was controlling it? It was the black Caribbeans that was controlling the black slaves.
Psychological warfare. Yeah.
That's exactly it. So you can imagine what it's like to come to the United States. My oldest aunt, which is my dad's aunt, came to the United States 1914. You still see her name at the statue. You could see her name, Ivy Graham, at the Statue of Liberty. She wrote it at the Statue of Liberty. You see her handwriting there at the Statue of Liberty. Her mindset is that she will never go back to Jamaica. Never. I've talked to her. She talked to us. That's how I'm giving you this information. So for her to buy her first house in 1917, 3 years later, she cleaned floors. Right? She wasn't educated. She cleaned floors. Married a light-skinned, almost white Jamaican named Davidson, which his family hated her because she was dark. He was of a Syrian descent. So you could imagine what it was like for her to buy this house in 1917, which she's passed down to us in generation, which Keenan, which is now $3.5 million for that house, tells you that her dream for the rest of the family that she's bringing here is that you overcome, you do well. That was her dream for everybody. So she was the first one that came, and everybody started to come after that. I'm sorry if I got off key. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's good. That's good. I want to go back to something that you said earlier about the school system. Can you the school system and something that you told me yesterday about the countries that broke away first and how
I understand what you say. So I'm going to give you a great example. When I left the public school at 8 years old and went to Hansel Place School over in Bedford-Stuyvesant, run by the Hansel Place School Church, they had all their teachers there were Caribbean, not descent. They were Caribbean. Grenada. I remember my teachers from Barbados, from Jamaica, all these different places. And the way that they learn or they were taught in the Caribbean was different. They learned from the British system. You didn't find multiple choice growing up there. Everything was essay. To pass certain forms in the Caribbean, there were people who took their lives if they couldn't pass a certain form or get to the next grade level. They literally, hey, if you can't do that, go to the fields and work. You know what I mean? Something of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
But I want you to see this, that the British colonies, their education system came from, of course, the British.
Right.
The British is like the star of Europe. You know what I mean? So they wanted to make sure that all of their colonies continued to learn from the Queen. Can I say something that it might be a little bit? We worship the way the Queen wanted us to worship.
Mm-hmm. So wait. So it sound like, so the British, the hierarchy was in Europe. You saying it was Britain and then everybody else in Europe, right?
Oh yeah.
Right. So I mean, of course, we know that that's white supremacy. So that same mindset has been filtered down even in some Caribbeans. The mindset, the ideology of white supremacy, and so they come to America and bring that same ideology of white supremacy. Lord have mercy.
Well, so while you might, and really, while you might say white supremacy from a standpoint of understanding the white thought, the Ku Klux Klan thought, the Third Reich, you know what I mean?
No, not that. Just being supreme.
No. I do understand what you're saying. The mindset of British people, even from when the United States was colonized, while the colony of Massachusetts, New York, down the whole line, Jamestown, all of that, Virginia, the mindset of British was that we're better. We're supposed to be better than our colonies, and our colonies need to reflect who we are.
Right.
So yes, I'm going to take out white, but I'm going to say supremacy. So coming to the United States, there was not hey, listen, I hear you, but it was not a thought process that we are coming here, or that Caribbean people were coming here to lose, or coming here to be like anyone here, including whites, right? But some, we gotta be careful. Now let me come over. Some Caribbean people, very high percentage, but some Caribbean people look at white as right.
I mean, Black Americans. I mean, that's all, the whole world. Yeah.
Yeah, we got to get away from. We have to pull away from that, and so you'll see it even now that you're going to find a lot of Caribbeans going to like white conferences or things like that, right? You see that now, but let me just say this: coming over, and I want to get to the supremacy thing. The supremacy thing is that that we have to do better than everyone else, but not to return to go back home, but to succeed here for the children's sake. What does that mean? Does that mean that translates into this? I can't wear what everybody's wearing. If I have to eat certain types of food, because in order to get, if I have to eat certain kind of foods in order to get my down payment, if I have to drive this, or if I have to take the bus in order to get the down payment for this house,
sacrifice.
It's gonna be done. If I have to, right. So it's gonna happen. So when you look at the Black diaspora, and now there's a great book that I read, called The Warmth of Other Suns. It's called The Warmth of Other Suns. Maybe we could put it in the chat later on. I did not understand the movement from Blacks from South to California, South to Chicago, South to New York, South to Washington,
migration.
Right, migration. I didn't understand that migration until I read that book. Now, that thing was out for a long time, but until I read that book and understood why blacks of black, I'm talking about African Americans, why African Americans had to leave the South, why they had to come to the, I'm going to call them ghettos, but I'm going to call it the communities that they had to put together.
Right.
Why they had to come to that is because of the sufferings that they went through. Caribbeans don't understand that type of suffering. Their migration here, especially to places like the big cities, was for a different reason than the Black American going to the urban areas. The two different reasons. And for those two different reasons, it's one of the reasons why we're not together, or why we don't bang together. It's
Right. Let's speak to that too. So like my grandfather, I guess my maternal grandfather, is from South Carolina,
right.
and he moved to New York City maybe during the Great Migration ever. And so I asked him, I was like, why did you come up here? And he said simply, he did not want to work on the farm and to escape oppression, and that was the thing. And then the same thing, my grandfather on my father's side. He said he didn't want to, he was in North Carolina. He said he could not stay in the South. He had to get out of there. And so, yeah, that's definitely the Great Migration. Yeah, that's moving into our DNA, our past, and that's so interesting. And that makes sense. If you're coming from the Caribbean and you don't know that history, it's a disconnect right there. So yeah, thank you. But I wanted you to speak to because you said that the countries that pulled away.
Right. I wanted to
okay.
What I wanted to say was, we're not going to have time to go through this. So those who are listening, what you need to do is list all, or find it, or Google all the Caribbean at that time colonies and when they broke away. Okay, when they've got their
independence.
Their independence. When you look at their independence, once they broke away from the British, they're on their own. You got to come up with their own agriculture, their own everything, right? So Jamaica, for example, the reason why I'm using Jamaica is because my parents are from Jamaica. They got their independence in the 60s, okay? Mm-hmm. So of course, when you get your independence, there's going to have to be a dip economically somehow, because British is not giving you everything anymore.
Yeah, no support.
Right, you're not going to get the big support anymore, right? When that happens, there's a dip in economics. And when that economic structure starts to break away, that's when you see a lot of people saying, I gotta leave Jamaica and go somewhere else. So you saw a different migration going to Canada, going to England, and coming to the United States. They didn't come to the United States because the white man was beating them, or because their kids, their 18, 19-year-old was getting hung, what we would call, was being lynched. They weren't coming there for that reason. Southerners were moving up to the South for less. I didn't say they escaped at all, right? They didn't escape at all, but they were moving. So when you look at all the colonies and you see their breakaway, you will see that each one of them, the one who broke away last or the one who broke away first, it takes them time to get the economic structure back, because there are people who will not leave. And I'm going to be honest with you, who right now, they're having a great experience in Jamaica right now, but not during the late 50s and the 60s. So when they broke away from, when England took or when they got their independence from each of those different Jamaican countries, Caribbean countries, when they got their independence, they fall off a little bit. So every reason for moving, or every reason for the migration, is really simply for economic reasons, not for racial equality. Though there are racial problems in the Caribbean. Listen, sad to say, yes, there are light-skinned, dark-skinned Chinese that came in to build the roads in Jamaica. So what does that tell you? If the Chinese had to come in to build the roads, what does that tell you? That the Jamaicans weren't building the roads. That's too small for them. You understand what I'm saying? The Syrians or the Arabs that's in St. Croix and different places, they're coming over, having their building businesses, etc. Anyway, when the British is out of the Caribbean structure, everybody had to fight for their own. And that's how you find the diaspora from now, not from Africa, but from the Caribbean, coming to the mainland or coming to the United States for economic freedom. Economic freedom. That's what it's for. But there's still, somebody said it, there's still colorism in the Caribbean. There's still divide in the Caribbean. You know what I'm saying? Or if you're going to marry,
that's what the devil doing every level, divide and conquer.
All of it. So I want to say it this way. There are changes. You're not going to find second generation Caribbean people talking about, I'm not marrying her because she's American or because she's Spanish or whatever. The generation after me, my sons, my cousins' sons, so third, fourth generation are now marrying white, Hispanic. My daughter dates Hispanic. My son was dating a white girl from Michigan. My parents are still here. You know what I mean? And they have never turned to them and said, "Oh, what are you doing?" They're more on, are they good for you? They're more on the economic side of things. And you're not going to pull that away from that generation. That generation wants to make sure that you're not renting a house. That generation want to make sure you're going to have a house before you have a car. That's the generation. They're still here. So that's the generation that's always going to return their tithe because the church has been good to them. You understand what I'm saying? They're not pulling away from the establishment. They're not going to stop paying taxes. They're not going to stop driving Fords because the Ford dealer guy is a Ku Klux Klan member. They're not going to do that. That's not their style. They're not going to stop wearing certain clothes. And now I'm talking about, some might, but that's not what it is. And so their mindset is that we have to be better than everyone, including the Black American. Right. Including the Black American. Do I feel, let me just be honest, do I feel that Black Americans are lazy? No, I don't believe that. What I do believe is that all of us come from different places in life. And those who come to the urban areas, we tend to stereotype Black Americans coming out of the urban areas. Mm-hmm. And when that happens, then it's something that we feed generations on, that the Black American is lazy. The Black. So if you watch Malcolm X,
get it all off your chest.
My Uncle Patrick, who died at 40, who died. We talked about that before we got on. Remember, we talked about that. He was one of the first number runners in Harlem.
Okay.
All right. When I asked my aunt, now not my father's sister, but my father's aunt, the one that came here in 1917, I remember sitting at her footstool, St. James Place, Putnam Avenue in Brooklyn, and asking her, well, what's number running? I don't know what that is. At 12 and 13 years old, I don't know what that is. Well, now the reason why I want to show you this is because Caribbean people feel, remember, this is this conversation. Caribbeans say, oh, Black Americans are lazy. Black Americans are drug dealers. Black American, listen, who ran the drug trade in the 80s in New York? It was the Jamaicans.
Absolutely.
Come on.
All the marijuana spots was run by Jamaicans when I was growing up.
Okay. Come on, let's be real now, right? And the Italians were afraid of the Jamaicans during that era, right? no matter where they bought it from. Yes, somebody said, and the Germans, which is true. There's Germans in Jamaica also, right? That split the racial lines. But here's what I want you to understand: that there also are Caribbean people that came to the United States that ain't doing nothing. Do you understand what I'm saying? So let me be clear with you. A Caribbean don't have it in their language structure to call another Caribbean a sellout, because there's nothing there, there's no language structure that calls them a sellout.
Okay.
The language structure that a Caribbean will call a Caribbean that's not doing anything, we'll call them worthless, but not a sellout, or you ain't about nothing. I'm saying it in and not the Jamaican patois, but when you say somebody, yo, you're worthless, you know, or nothing,
right.
That's bad to hear. You don't want to hear something like that. But there are Caribbeans, a lot of Caribbeans that ain't worth nothing. Okay, I'm saying it bad. That's worthless. In other words, your family comes up here so that you can have the economic structure,
Right.
learn. You go to school. You're supposed to come out of school. And my father did not want me to follow him in refrigeration. My dad, refrigeration repairman, right? He ran all of Downstate Medical Center and Kings County as far as their blood banks, their kidney machines, all of that, because that's refrigerators. Okay, they're refrigerators. I remember I didn't want to go to Oakwood. I said, Dad, I want to do what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
He almost had a coronary. Like, what? You can't do what I do. My father didn't even want me to have a trade. Okay. He wanted me to go to Oakwood. So when I went to Oakwood, I didn't want to go to Oakwood to be a pastor. I went to Oakwood because my father said it would have been a failure on us if we had not entered into college. All right.
Wait. Can I?
Go ahead.
Now, for those that's listening, if you have any questions, please go ahead and chime in. I always forget to say that, but go ahead and chime in. But I want to speak on church. So because I grew up in New York City again. Not that I was looking for a church at that time, but I had never heard of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Oh, wow.
Never heard of it. It wasn't until I moved out of the state into Virginia, and then to go back home and see that there's a Seventh-day Adventist church like almost on every corner. And then I found out, I was like, okay, well, because they're just not in my community. What I mean by that, is mainly Caribbean. They're just not there in my community. And then when I went after leaving seminary to try to get hired, somebody told me, because I was like, hey, I want to go to New York City to be a pastor. Somebody told me, well, you don't have an accent, so you're probably not going to get hired. I was like, wow, really?
Yep.
And then, but I also heard the reverse. That same person said if you have an accent, you probably won't get hired in other places as well. I was like, man, that's awful.
Yep.
That's terrible. And so yeah, man, what are your thoughts about that? What are your thoughts about what I just said?
I believe that my ministry, I believe yours also, I can't speak, entirely for you, but it's urbanized, right? The church, again, the reason why I like regional conferences, I still support regional conferences. I work in a regional conference because I feel like we still need the regional conference. For those who don't know, regional conference is basically starting from the 1940s, where we had to break away, if you want to call it that, or start our own conferences because of inequality with pastors.
Racial inequality, yes.
Inequality with pastors, education inequality. I mean, it was terrible. And so we had to start our own. Remember now, in the 1940s, you had people like George Peters. He was Caribbean. A lot of our founding fathers of the regional work were from Caribbean, but the pushers were American folks who understood what real what racism is. Remember, the first regional conference came out of Chicago.
Right, Lake Region, yep.
Right, Lake Region. Then it spread all the way down. There is still racism in between African Americans and Caribbean, even as even in the black work, there is. People won't say that there is, but it is. When you see that there are certain churches, when you come from the Caribbean, other Caribbean people would say, "No, this is our church." Um,
Wow.
listen, Church of the Oranges, and I'm not saying them. I'm just giving us there are churches. There are churches that we know of in every. They're what you call West Indian churches. I mean, we call it that. We call them Caribbean churches. Why do we call it Caribbean churches? Because the majority of the people are there, pulled towards each other. And what do we say? Do we send an American pastor or an African American pastor to a West Indian church? It's getting better now, but not when I was graduating in 2001. Maybe I put the date out there. So, but a conference president said to me, "I'm sorry, I can't hire you in the South because you're of Caribbean descent." I said to myself, I don't even sound Caribbean. And maybe some people say you sound like a New Yorker, but man, really and truly, the New York accent is everything. It's just everything crunched into one. It's still there. You will still find people who say without the Caribbean churches, you won't have the tithe base. You hear those things.
Right.
The second generation, second generation. You hear these things. Second generation pastors, Caribbean pastors, are management is better than the Black American pastor. I've heard it.
Wow.
Oh,
Wow.
But a lot of those things are coming out of Caribbean experience, things that they have experienced. My dad called me last week, and I do a Sabbath school thing for the quarter. I did the Sabbath school with 4 of us in Sabbath school, and I headed out. My dad called me, and my dad said, "You're not teaching the Sabbath school. You're only talking about it." You understand what I'm saying? And I said, "Dad, called a discussion." "No, we're not."
Facilitate.
Right. I said, "I'm facilitating it, and we studied, so we're going all over the place." "No,
Right.
that's not the way you're supposed to teach it," and blah, 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 blah. You understand what I'm saying? So what he sees is that when you teach in the Sabbath school lesson, you ought to be teaching it from Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday,
Right.
Thursday. His mentality, my dad's mentality is, I'm not teaching it. You ready for this? I'm not teaching it the way the world church wants it to be taught. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I was a little careful what I said, but there is still racism, even amongst us. There's still racism. And that's why, if you bring it back to George Floyd, what you were talking about before, I put it on my Facebook. It took me a whole lot to make a statement, because the statement that I believe we need to make is together as one first before you go out there and fight, because all of us think differently. There's no way that we're going to be able to get out there and vote. Listen, there's a lot of Caribbeans that are citizens that won't vote. And then you have a lot of Caribbeans who are not documented. You got it?
Oh yeah.
That can't vote. They stay out of political arenas because they're afraid that if they do say something, that it will limit their progress. As far, right? Their
The American dream.
That's right. That's right. So even though, listen, even Adventism, I believe, have surpassed the Church of England.
That's what the comment says right there. Yeah.
They even surpassed that. I think we were talking about that last night, right? Where it used to be the Church of England, which is the reason why we worship the way we worship. There's no drums. Well, it's starting to come now, but there's no drums. We singing, the hymns. we don't want to worship. We want to worship the Queen of England style. Nah, you know, the Black American, I'm going to say this, the Black American worship has been passed down from out of Africa.
Mhm.
So, you know, so when we hear the drum, there's a message. You see, I said we now, right? Can I just add this in? Let me just add this in. For the second generation Caribbean, we don't have a home. All right. So I can't go to Jamaica and call that home. They don't look at me as Jamaican.
Right.
My family, my Jamaican family, don't look at me as Jamaican.
Right.
They look at me as American.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? Americans don't look at the second generation as Americans. They look at them as descendants of, or they're Jamaicans.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, let's look at New York City. In New York City, we see a girl walk down the block. I'm talking about, not now. I'm sorry. We see a girl walk down the block. We be like, yo, that Puerto Rican is fine. Or that Puerto Rican is this, that, and the other. We don't know whether she's Puerto Rican or whether she could be born here in America, but we immediately say that she's Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
You see, when you go into certain communities, the Haitian community, and you hear them speaking Haitian, he's speaking Creole, and this, that, and the other, we say, oh, yo, he Haitian. You see what I'm saying? Immediately, we put their country to them.
Yeah.
But they are different, but you are not considered, if you're born in the United States, we're Yankees to the Jamaican. Where did the Jamaican people get that term from, Yankees? Seriously, in their term, they say, oh man, you're a Yankee. Where Yankees came from? Yankees came from Yankee Doodle.
Okay.
Right? That came from when the Civil War, not Civil War, the war where we broke away from British. Revolutionary War. So those who are in British is British, and those who are in the Revolutionary War are Yankees. Look how long 200-300 years has passed down where Jamaicans are still calling Americans Yankees. Where did they get that from? The British.
Right.
So we don't have that home. My children are not Jamaican.
Mm-hmm.
Their parents are from Jamaica. My parents are from Jamaica, I mean, but my children don't consider themselves as Jamaican. They don't. So we have to continue to teach them. Go ahead.
Sorry. Right. No, I'm about to say it's interesting because for a long time I looked at like African American, like we're almost in the same same pot, because never felt like America was home. Never feel can't go to Africa. Africans don't. I've been to Africa before. They don't look at us as being African until I came to the realization that, I mean, realistically, this country was built on the back of African Americans. So if somebody say, hey, you need to go back to that, I'm like, nah, my family literally built this country. It was built on the back of slaves. So no, I have every right to this country as anybody else. Right. But now this transition is, so we went over the diagnosis and the prognosis, and we know that the true prognosis is sin. The devil wants to divide and conquer. Right. And that's on every level. And any idea of supremacy, any idea of dominating, any idea to think that you're better than anybody, that comes straight from the devil.
It has to be.
Straight from the devil. And we know Jesus was the opposite. He humbled himself. He came high, but he humbled himself. He continued to go down, continued to humble himself. And that's how if we all just need to humble ourselves, that's true leadership, and that's truly being a Christian. But now, so what is we did the diagnosis, the prognosis. So now what's the prescription? What can you say to all your Caribbean brothers and sisters that are listening? If they didn't turn off yet and call you not sell out, what you said, a good for nothing, worthless. Yeah. And I see you, Chima. You said not all West African countries welcome West African country welcome Black American. Thank you, Chima. That's good to know.
That's true. I do admit that there are certain African countries. See, our mentality is that we look at Africa and say that there's just one continent. There are African countries that that we are welcomed in. But I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not going to Jamaica. That's not my home. And I'm not going to Africa. I'm not going there. I'm just not. Let's just be realistic. It's not going to happen. But I do know people who have moved to Africa. I have a cousin that got up and said, I can't deal with this anymore. I'm going to Africa, where we came from. West Africa, where we came from. Hey, more power to you. I know people that have left and gone back to Jamaica. Not my family. One was aborted, so I mean, but that's through whichever. I'm going to tell you what I do believe is the healing process to this. Mm-hmm. People are people.
Right.
It's really the human race, right? And I'm not trying to be, let's kumbaya.
No, I'm with you.
Not trying to do that.
There's no competition. A race is a competition.
Nah. What we have to do is understand that the cultures that we have, especially Southern culture and Caribbean culture, are the same. We cook our foods the same. We discipline our children the same. We're the same. Matter of fact, there's some patois that's being spoken in Jamaica that Geechees in the Carolinas understand more than a Northerner will be able to understand, because it has the twang to it that we don't. Well, if we could just sit back and understand that we are one people, and that our cultures really, they don't clash, they coincide with each other, then I think our thought process is going to be different. Let me just speak to the Caribbean folks that have not turned off yet. It's always good to have pride in who you are, but to be humble to help everyone. It's always good to have nationalism. And I got to be careful with that word, because we got that word got thrown all over the place when the president said it. It's good to be proud to be Jamaican. It's good to be proud to be a Caribbean, but you got to remember that doesn't hold supremacy. If that holds supremacy over people, then that's not nationalism. That's racial, and that pushes out racial bias. We have to stop. I'm going to tell you what the word is. We have to stop living on our stereotypical behaviors, or our stereotypical thought process, because there are lazy Caribbeans and there are lazy African Americans. Yet there are African Americans who are killing the stock market right now and have businesses that's out there and has opened schools in our communities. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We got to get out of that stereotype and stop believing that thing. And we have to stop teaching our children that. I'm talking about even now. You'll hear Caribbean people say things about put down African Americans. We can't do that. Right. Not if we're going to get to legislation. Not if we're going to bring the divide closer than where it is. I'm not saying it's going to be here, but if we're helping keeping the divide out there, God's not pleased. There has to be a spiritual background to do this. And I'm not putting on my pastoral hat. I'm putting on my Christian hat to say that if you are a Christian and you have racial tendencies, God is not pleased. Christ is not pleased with that. And I'm speaking from a Christian standpoint. If you are true Islamic and you hate your brethren, then you are not following the Quran or Allah. You're not. It's just not. It should be peace, and you don't have peace by breaking down the next man. It can't be that way. And that's where I think our medication comes from, our prescription comes from. We must get to the place of understanding that we must heal ourselves. The Black race or the human race needs to come together as one. White people call me, Pat, youth directors have called me from the 52 youth directors that we have. What can I do? What can we do? You need to go back and teach your children. Reteach your children. That's the only way.
Love.
Yeah.
We got to teach love,
yeah.
because hate prejudice, racism. That's all those things are taught.
Sure.
And I'm with you. I'm with you. I mean, really, it's Jesus. Not to sound or preachy, but that is really the answer.
It is.
We need conversion
Yep.
because you cannot be a Christian and be racist at the same time. The two do not go together. You cannot be Christian and have these prejudices and look down upon people.
Right.
You can't do it. And I think we also got to have these conversations. We got to continue to talk, and don't be afraid of these conversations. We gotta talk about these issues.
Yeah.
And so I definitely, and I didn't see no questions. I'm assuming so many people were just floored by everything that they heard, that they were just stuck. They couldn't even type the questions in. But I mean, is there any questions out there? Any questions? Any questions? We try to hold off at least one. Try to get at least one question.
I can tell you this. I've been listening to your the conversations. Don't hold up on it. It's something that needs to be had. I'm very uncomfortable in these conversations.
Yeah.
Very uncomfortable. Even within my church structure, being a youth department, a department head, it's very difficult for me to even speak up, even amongst my peers.
Wow.
It's time for us to have these conversations. So that, and that's what I feel. God did not call me to be the Martin Luther King of this George Floyd thing that has happened.
Right.
What he has called me to do is to wake up my mom and dad, is to wake up my aunties and my uncles. It's for us to stop looking at Trump and start looking at Jesus. It's for us to move ahead and stop making excuses. I do understand Jesus is from the motherland. I understand that his hue is darker. But I do believe that we need to get off of some of these things and move towards love. We have to do it.
That's the answer. Love truly conquers all. It's not corny, it's real. We got one question that came in. And we'll take this one question. It says, why are Caribbeans so strict or extreme in the SDA church?
You ever you're first generation Seventh Adventist. You're the first Adventist, correct?
Yeah, I just got baptized.
Right. Yeah, yesterday. So what I want to share with you really quick, the person that asked that, is that when Caribbeans were in the Anglican church and worshiping on Sundays, and they got the truth, they took their positions with them and just simply changed the day. Catholicism is extreme. Really, when you think about it, go to Rome right now and watch that. Catholicism is extreme. Church of England is extreme. So when they left their other churches and became Seventh-day Adventists, they took that extreme with them. Don't forget now, when they were Sunday worshipers, they kept Sunday like it was the Sabbath. They didn't cook, they didn't clean, they didn't do all those type of things. So their extreme comes along with them from their culture. So that's the reason why you may look at it as extreme. They don't want no drums playing in the church, because England ain't had no drums playing in the church. Everybody's wearing ties and shirt and jackets. Where did that come from? That came from England. That's European. Why do we dress up in suits to go to church? That's European. That's not African. That's European, right? Where we get
we're both wearing college shirts. Yeah, that's European.
Hold on. Yes, I was wearing. Right? No, this is true. Okay, let's think about it. I was wearing from the slums of Shaolin.
Right.
Right. I was wearing that, and then I said, "Oh, I have something to do. Let me put on a shirt that that has a collar on it." Why? Because we feel it's based on, and I'm talking about my culture. I feel that the only way for me to be able to be presentable,
professional, We have to look like we came out of Europe. And that's something that we all struggle. And that's why, our time is about up. But that's why in Revelation chapter 18, right, talking about Babylon, God says, come out of her. And Babylon is confusion, right? So if we look down, all cultures are flawed because they all came from men, all cultures. But if we try to put one culture above the other and deem this culture to be quote unquote holy or more professional, that's confusion. It's we got to come out of that white supremacist, though, that mindset. We have to.
See, I got offended when you said that.
You got offended.
No, when I say offended, I mean I'm using a big word.
Right.
But it's true.
But we all have to come out of it, not just you. I got it on too. No, I got it button up to the top.
Come on, man.
To the top.
Come on. I'm trying to tell you, we have to be re-educated.
Yeah.
I know time is flown. When my son came home with his white girlfriend, I went to Sabbath. We went to not Germantown. Start with a G, up Dave Defoe's last church. What's his name has now. Anyway, we went to church up there, and my son was sitting there with his girlfriend, and I'm preaching this thing. You know what I mean? I'm preaching this thing, and I recognized that I only taught my children love.
Amen.
Right? So if I had said to him, "Yo, she can't be a part of our family. She white," it would have broken every aspect of what I taught them about God and love.
Mm-hmm.
Now, people call me sellout, call me whatever you want to call me. Yes, people are going to say to me, "Oh, it'd be better if you keep them in your same, in the Caribbean thing, or even Black American, or Black, or whatever the case may be." What am I teaching them by telling them that? I'm not going to tell you what I wish for, but I'm glad what I taught them.
Right.
Love. So that's it. I taught them love. I have to break the cycle of who's better and who's not better. And I got to break that cycle. Though mine is not a Caribbean American thing, it's not. Mine is not that. I have some hangups. I do. And in order for me to start talking about George Floyd, I got some hangups. I'm going to share one with you. Oh, if you guys just listen to what the police say, stop being aggressive, just show them your wallet when they come put your hands on the wheel, then you won't die. That's not true.
Yeah.
You could do all the right things and still end up dead, or still end up now that I'm doing counseling, I've also learned, forget black and whites, we treat people with mental health terribly. You know, that's another conversation.
Yeah. I mean, that's my field as well. So yeah, I know all about that.
Yeah.
But man, I'm so grateful that you came on to talk, man. I really appreciate this conversation. Really appreciate you for being your honesty, your transparency, and I pray that everyone could take for this. Let's begin to have these conversations.
Sure. And I recommend this. I recommend that. I just got hip to conversations. I saw about two of them. I saw this. What caught me was that you're my friend on Facebook, and I saw this white guy on there. I was like, "Yo, what are you talking about?" I watched the next one. He had this white guy on there. I'm like, "Yo, what are you talking to him about?" And when I started to listen to it, I said, "Oh, snap! A different perspective, a perspective that's real." That's what we need right now. Let's stop the hypism and get on the learning tip. We got some good white people, and I shouldn't use the word some. There are white people who believe in this thing, this Black Lives Matter, more than some of us believe in it.
You got that right.
Okay.
I marched and I saw it for myself. I seen white people with signs that said, "We're listening, we care." I was blown away. Blown away.
My next door neighbor is white, and he out there marching, and I'm scared of COVID. You hear me?
Yeah.
I know that's another conversation, man. We should have had a 2-hour, but I got to.
Yeah.
Please have me back when you get a chance. Please have me.
Okay, we'll do. Well, man, well, preacher, thank you so much, man. Can you pray to close us out?
Sure will. Let's pray. God, thank you very much. I thank you so much for the break in the middle of the day where we can have a conversation about things that are comfortable and uncomfortable. Thank you for your Holy Spirit. We thank you, Lord, that those who have listened to this may not leave here with more anger, but with a sense of mind that we all have to do better, and we all must survive, and only can survive with this thing called love. Love only comes from you. I thank you for this opportunity. Continue to bless this program. Continue to bless Pastor Keenan. And we just ask you, God, that at the end of all of this, our main goal is that we live with you throughout the endless ages of eternity. Bless us now, we pray, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, preacher. God bless everyone. And yes, stay uncomfortable, everybody. Stay uncomfortable.
Yep.
Yeah, hold on, preacher. Hold on for 1 second.